And then when you were in the youth team, Paul, how many dealings did you have with Brian? You know, would you see him quite regularly or not at all, really?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, this is where my relationship with Clough really kicks in the youth team, because to set the scene, if you remember correctly, the 2 years that I was a youth team player, there would have been anyway, the year Forest went down was I was second year YTS.
Right. So
that was the year that Brian Clough got a standing ovation from 6,000 Forest fans on the football field when he retired, and they went down. You imagine that happening to anybody now. So the year before that, and that year they went down, were my 2 YTS years. So I always describe it, and I've written a script about those 2 years. I'm going to do something with, but it's written, it's done, but can't really talk about it at the moment. But those 2 years I describe as the empire crumbling, really. And we, if you can imagine, maybe more of a metropolis crumbling, because we were the sewer rats, the youth team. You know, we were scurrying. We were literally under the tunnels, where the pipes were in the drying rooms. You know, we were scurrying around. We were making tea. We were cleaning stuff and putting it back without getting seen. We were the great unwashed. We were the unheard. You know, getting filthy underpants thrown at you, hitting you in the face. Like, get them clean. Got training in an hour. Like, just the scum of the earth. But because I was a goal scorer and he loved a goal scorer, he used to love me. So I used to shadow him quite often. So you've got this sort of apprentice and sorcerer's apprentice scenario going around. He used to call me Blondie. I used to hear him shout it down the corridors. So he wouldn't be in all the time, but when he was, you'd hear his dog Delboy first. So you'd hear the dog come scampering down, some ASMR for the audience there. You'd hear his dog come scampering down the corridor, and all that, we'd be in the youth team room, and all the lads would go, "Oh, your dad's in. Your dad's come in." I was like, fuck off. And you just hear Blondie down the corridor. So I'd have to go pretending that I resented it, but really thinking, you know, feeling special. And I'd have to go and fix him a drink, fix him a squash. More often than not, run him a bath or get his sauna ready. Right. Because not all the time, but, you know, now and again he'd be nursing a bit of a hangover, I think. And his bath always consisted of 2 ice cold buckets, 2 buckets of ice, Gatorade buckets of ice in a bath filled up with cold water.
Right.
And or the sauna, or I'd have to run and do an errand for him, or more often than not, walk Delboy.
Really? Right.
Yeah, it'd be like, go and walk Delboy down the Trent, and don't bring him back until he's done his business. So, I'd be there, stood by the side of the Trent, like kicking his fucking dog. Do shit, for fuck's sake. The lads are all like walking past me. We used to walk down the Trent training. It used to take about 20 minutes every day. 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back. Walk down the side of the Trent. The lads would all be walking past me. We stood there with a dog. And often when I'd run him a bath, he'd tell me to run myself a bath. So I'd run a nice warm bath there. And can you imagine like being 15, 16 just turned? Like 4 months ago, you got your headmaster and you're with your mates in school. Then your first job, your gaffer's Brian Clough, and he's having a bath there and you're having a bath. And you got the injured lads just milling around. He's like, "How are you doing then, son? How are your mum and dad? Are they all right? Are you courting?" He just wants to learn about your life. You know, he wants to know. He wants to know whether his centre forward's got a girlfriend, or you know, whether he's got a stable life. And so I find myself like, "What do you do today?" "Oh, usual chores and jobs and stuff." But I had a bath with Brian Clough, walked his dog. But what I think in retrospect now. And the lads who were in the youth team with me at the time, they agree, because they got separate, different individual attention in different ways for different reasons. I think he was trying to make me feel special because that's what he did with his forwards. If you were a goal scorer, you were elevated. Frank Clark did it to Stan Collymore to some degree as well. And if I'd scored 2 or 3 goals on the weekend, which invariably happened, you have a bath, son. You're special. You come and have a bath. You come and have a walk with me around the pitch. You walk the dog, just bring him back when he's done it. And I'd come back and be like, don't bother. I'm told Archie to only train them for half an hour. Go and take £20 off my desk. £20. Bearing in mind, I was on £18.50 a week in year 1. And that only went up to 240 in year 2. So that's a YTS for you, so the most they could pay you. So 20 quid was loads. And I'd go into his room and there'd be piles of 20s like that on his desk. So, not denigrating Scousers to any degree, but I've got a certain bloodline in it. And so I'm looking at it and thinking, Jesus Christ. But that's the discipline. I only ever took 20 quid. Never would I take any more. And so I had a little bit of a baptism of fire with my relationship with Clough. And to talk about the script slightly, what I can do is it's built around this character Blondie in the middle. Again, I'm separating myself out a bit as I'm getting older. This young kid. And you've got Clough on one side, who, as we've said, his empire is crumbling. But similar was happening to my dad at home. He was struggling a bit with alcohol and was working loads, and then was just having a bad time, really, with it. And then you've got this character in the middle, this Blondie, this young lad, 15, 16, that's dealing with that at work and dealing with that at home. And it's just this balance, and it's quite a beautiful little world. It's quite a lovely little script. I'm really quite proud of it. But so that's what that's about. And yeah, the final scene sort of wraps this all up, really, in my relationship with Clough. Have you ever seen the footage of that day when he goes down, when Forest go down, and he gets interviewed? Is it Martin Tyler? I think it might be Martin Tyler that interviews him. I forget who's interviewing.
Does he sort of wave to the crowd and then puts his green jumper on?
But he does a singular interview, and it's in the old gym. I say gym. There were 3 rickety machines in there and all the ball bags. That was it. So there were 4 people in that room, and it might be Martin Tyler. I forget. Sorry, I do forget. The cameraman, Brian Clough, and me. Just off camera. If you watch the interview, it's the one where he goes, Mr. Clough, it's been an honour. And Brian Clough sort of he wells up and he goes, there's this real gutter. It comes from nowhere. And he goes, thank you, son. And even when I talk about that now, and when people watch that, I send shivers down my spine. Because I think that's the moment he realises it's done. It's over. And that's the second to last scene in the script, but that then was the last time I saw him. We heard him often because he would still come to reserve games. As I'd evolved from the youth team into the reserves, we'd be playing Leicester, and you'd be playing Leicester reserves at Leicester's ground or wherever it might be, and you'd just hear, Blondie, fucking stand still. You're running around like a bloody lunatic. And then that'd be, and you'd looking around and you'd be up in the stands somewhere. So his ghost hovered for a while. The spectre of Brian Clough still hovered around the club for a while. And you could argue did for 20 odd years, but that's a different story.
And do you think having such a figure at the start of your career really helped you? Because you said at that age you were full of confidence anyway. But to have one of the greatest managers of all time rate you as well as a top striker, that must have been amazing.
Yeah, he was a striker himself, so it's one of those things when same with players that you look up to, when they can do it and they've been there and done it. And by the way, people say he'd have beat Jimmy Greaves's scores, tallies, because he was that good and he was on track to do so. He was a phenomenal centre forward. So yeah, to have somebody that you respect, that we all knew how good he was. Particularly the forwards were always pulled to one side. So the gaffer did this, gaffer did listen to the gaffer when it comes to centre forwards. Yeah, it was amazing to feel to feel special in that way. Didn't fully grasp it. Like I said, I was a young boy. So you don't fully grasp it, you don't understand it. But again, in retrospect, looking back, that period for me was so rich, which is why, and again, the resurgence under Frank Clark, it was just so full of life that I didn't even, it's only looking back through the lens of like a really intense lens of COVID, really. I still haven't worked out why it was so intense under COVID. Like I say, maybe like a warm blanket, maybe it was fear, I don't know. But those two periods in my life that sort of blended into one were so full of life and was so rich. And like I say, I was around a genius and world-class footballers, you know, under Frank Clark, where we were finishing third in the Premier League and playing in Europe. So when you look at that, and when someone like myself, who anyone will tell you knows me, like this is recent for me. I've never looked back, ever. Doesn't bother me, not interested. It always seemed crude. Mm-hmm. But now it's almost like a really rich river that I'm fishing from and bringing stuff forward into the now and making it relevant now and making it interesting now. So yeah, looking back at that time and thinking about, to run the river analogy, like the ripples that were caused from having people like Clough around you and the sort of advice you'd hear every day. I still tell it now. I coach my daughter's football team, Gedling Town, and even now, I'm telling wingers, because when I used to play on the wing, because I used to play centre forward, but to break into the reserves, we used to have to come and play on the wing sometimes. And he'd just scream at me to come and get chalk on my boots, and he'd come and check my boots to see if I'd got chalk on my boots. And he used to scream at me to stand still. What that used to do, it lets the game flow and it lets you breathe. And what it does to you is it puts you in it's almost like cheating, but it puts you in a position where space is created. And when you receive the ball on the touchline, you've stood still, you're in a false position. So you've got 30 yards to run into with the football at any given point. It's really smart. So stuff like that I pass on, and there's all kinds. There's so much to pass on.